Sacred Heart is proud to sponsor Pensacola Histories in recognition of the Daughters of Charity who brought their mission of care to Pensacola over 90 years ago.
Hello and welcome to our continuing story of Pensacola, North America's first place city. And today we're dealing with one in a series of biographical sketches of, well, what I call men who made a great difference in Pensacola. And many of these people, of course, are well known or were well known historically. Some others, like the one we're going to talk about today, may not have been known to too many people, and certainly they did not find themselves recorded in history books, but they made a difference. And the man I want to talk about today his full name was Erling N. Lee. Most people called him Al Lee, mainly because he was born in a little town in Minnesota. The name of the town was Albert Lee, and consequently the names sort of fit together. And Al Lee grew up in that area. He attended the University of Minnesota, and once he began his business career, he went into woodworking, which was a perfectly logical thing because the town of Albert Lee was in the woodworking area. After a time in the early 1940s, as the war began and there was a need for skilled people in woodworking industries, Al found himself working in a major company in Maine, where he went up the ladder, if you will, in responsibilities, became a very able manager as well as a technical specialist. And at a time here in Pensacola when the Armstrong Cork company was about to make a change, they hired Al, and he came to this area, first of all, as an assistant manager of the plant that we have here on the west side of the city. Al was hired here to become a part of Armstrong, and basically what was happening then for that company here was this. Armstrong had just finished completion of a brand new mill to make the insulating board that pretty much duplicated what had been manufactured here in Pensacola since 1929. This new mill was in Macon. It was state-of-the-art, brand new, perfectly put together, and the Armstrong plan was that they were going to continue to run the Pensacola plant for maybe 2 or 3 years until the Macon plant had all of the bugs worked out of it and was at full capacity. And Al knew that, and when they moved the full structure of management to the Macon plant, Al was made the manager of the Pensacola plant. Now, there was a difficulty in all of this, of course, because the company, very wisely for them, took with them all of the people that they really wanted to keep. There were people in all sorts of trades within the plant itself, and many of the managers, and they went to Macon, and Al was left with the structure here of just being able to kind of sort of limp along, if you will, and he was determined that, of course, that he was going to do a good job. Well, in 1950, the situation was that they had about 2 to 2.5 years to go in all of this plan, and Al Lee was concerned, and he was determined that this plant was going to survive. And so he began a whole series of measures here to try and upgrade the workforce, upgrade their capabilities, upgrade the quality of what they turned out, and step by step he began to do this. Well, by the time they reached 1952, the work at Pensacola was coming along so well, and Al was being respected more and more each year. The company decided, well, maybe there's something we could do to add a new chapter in Pensacola plant's life. And so they sent a research team to Pensacola, led by a man named Bill Reinschmidt, and he was assisted by another man named Ben Johnson. And Johnson and Reinschmidt began the determination of a new formula for making the insulating board. Now, I must tell you that previously, the original Armstrong plant here, which began in 1929, used almost entirely the ground-up wood chips, which were the residue of the Newport Industries operation here, which had been here since 1916, and they had been extracting naval stores from those wood chips. When the chips were, when that process was ended, the chips were just a dry mass up into 1951-52. All that they were good for was burning, and of course the local neighbors around the Newport plant were not happy about that on Mondays in particular, because the wash lines always got dirty. But anyway, one of the problems that this wood fiber board had was that it was flammable. Now, even when at the new Macon plant, they were not going to use, of course, not going to use the wood chips idea. They were going to cut fresh pine from the forest and grind it into a pulp, and that was to be the basic raw material. Now, that was fine. It worked. It produced a better quality board, but it still was flammable. And so the research engineers here began working with a new new process which had as a basic what they then called mineral wool. It was a mineral wool is a fiber which is created by heating steel mill slag into a slurry and then blowing heavy streams of air across it, and it creates the mineral wool fiber, which is non-flat. It will not burn. And consequently, the research began here. And early in 1953, things were going along well, and they made the first tests. Well, people were of course, were very surprised at how well all of this worked, because they were still using exactly the same machinery as they had used on the other process. And when the first tests were made, people could not believe it. It looked wonderful. The board was lighter. It cut and trimmed beautifully, and of course, it was it would not burn. Out of the plant, AlLee and the others, of course, conducted all sorts of flammability tests, because this was one of the key parts. And of course, then of course they began looking at what can we do to make this a new process altogether, because it took different equipment, different slurry making to produce this board as compared to what they had done with the wood fibers. And so step by step into 1953 and 54, these experiments continued. And today, if one lives in Pensacola and might drive down Navy Boulevard, as if one drives across the bridge over the railroad tracks there, just west of Pace Boulevard, and look to the south, one sees a tall tower. Kind of a red brickish color tower that is right in the middle of the industrial complex there. And that was the key piece of equipment that Armstrong built to make this new process really work. And so by mid-1953, that was in place. And so now, month after month, they began further experiments, first of all with how thick could this board be made, how thin could it be made, and what kinds of sizes were easily constructed from it. Well, as it turned out, all of these things worked well. So by the time we moved forward another 2 to 2.5 years, AlLee's determination, his upgrading of the workforce, his determination to make this a quality plant was succeeding. And so by now, step by step, the Armstrong sales organization in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, began to really concentrate on this new board. They still had the Macon plant up there, which was doing one thing. Now they had something quite new at Pensacola itself. And so basically, this plant began to convert, and so that by the time we get into the latter part of the 1950s, the old wood fiber operation here was totally discontinued. The connectors, the conveyors that connected the plant to the Newport industry, they were taken down. And so this plant now began to concentrate specifically on the fireproof material that could be put into what now began to be called sealing systems. Now this new board could be used for a lot of things, but by now Armstrong had determined that the #1 priority for it was to be in beautiful sealing systems, because this board had a wonderful quality of capturing sound materials from whether it be in a restaurant or an office or even an industrial plant. This material really worked. And so they developed all sorts of additional items for it, so that the material could be easily placed on a ceiling as a system and could be done inexpensively. And so basically this operation began to flourish. Now, to complete the story, of course, we have to say that as we move into the 21st century, Armstrong has become one of the world leaders in this type of material. They not only have this plant here, they also have other facilities in Europe manufacturing from the same formula, and it is being sold worldwide, so that Armstrong can rightfully claim to be the world leader in non-flammable sealing materials. And of course, this basically, as one travels to big cities anywhere and looks up at the ceiling, whatever building or office or restaurant you're in, chances are very good that what might be looking at would be a sealing system from Armstrong, either this plant or one of the same company. AlLee, of course, continued on in the other works that he had. Al was a good citizen everywhere where he turned. He was a determined man. He became a vestryman at Christ Church. He was a member of the board of directors of the YMCA. He was a strong believer in the community chest and a director of that for many years, and served on several of the other United Way agencies. And of course, as things progressed, he encouraged all of his staff people to do the same kind of thing, so that Armstrong, as a plant, became known as a very good community citizen. Now, tragically, AlLee had been a smoker. And from the early part of the 1950s, his health had begun to suffer just a little bit. He had had assistance from clinics in New Orleans and had some surgery to correct some of the problems. But and things seemed to be going along pretty well. But then, unfortunately, at age just 62, Al Lee suffered a heart attack and died right here in the Pensacola airport, as it turned out. And of course, when that happened, everyone within that organization was just grief-stricken from it, because he had meant so much. But fortunately, Al had done another thing that, of course, a good manager should do. He had built an organization so that no matter what management level we were talking about, every position had a successor well positioned and well trained, so that when Al died, the man who had worked side by side with him, a man named Dwight Hufford, stepped up from the assistant's position to become the plant manager, and he did. And Dwight Hufford then would continue to serve the company there in the same role for the next 10 years. Now, if we look at the whole total situation there at that plant in the year 2009 or beyond, we have to take a hard look at it. The Armstrong plant here is a beautiful operation. It is highly technical. Many fine things have been added to it since Al Lee's death. But today, as it works on, it is a strong employer, pays wonderful wages. All of the people who work there are very loyal to their company, and it is one of the operations, one of the industrial operations to which our community can look with great pride. It continues to serve. It has a large employment, and even during the recession of the early part of the 21st century, the plant's operations continued almost undeterred. So basically, we look at this gentleman from Minnesota, from the town of Albert Lea, and we call him Al, of course, Al Lee. Al made such a difference, because when he came here, he was just determined that this plant was not going to close, and he did everything almost on a superhuman effort and pulled people with him. He was a wonderful leader. He was almost a father figure to some of the people in the management group. So we can say that in the looking back for the time that he survived in that role, he made such a difference, because of course I can say this with some pride, because I was part of his organization for a short time. Al Lee made a difference, and I honestly believe that if he had not been here, if he had not done what he did, it is very probable that the plant that is so strong a part of our employment picture here today, that plant probably might not even be here today. But happily it is, and this is the kind of story that we like to look at. And Al Lee, of course, is like so many others that we've had in the Pensacola area over our 450 plus years. We have had men beginning with Elias Durnford, who laid out our city. We've had men like William Chipley, who had the foresight to build great railroad systems. We've had men who have helped build the court system and the legal process of our entire community. We've had wonderful people in the area of journalism. All of these collectively have made Pensacola a place that we can all be proud of. It is, of course, we've been here on and off anyway for 450 years. It's a story that is unequaled any place in the United States, and we need to think about not only what we do today and the problems that we may face from time to time. We have to look back and say a special thank you to men like Al Lee, who made all of this possible. Industry has been such a part of our life here for many years, particularly in the lumbering era and then in the manufacturing times beginning in 1916. And we've had wonderful men. Lee is just a typical example of, or not necessarily a typical, he's a special example of all of the wonderful things that have taken place. So when you look around your community, and when you look around at the things that make the economy go, remember that the men who have had special roles have done so much for us, and we never want to forget and take a little time out every once in a while to say thank you to their memory and for all of the wonderful things that they have done to make this America's first place city.